Welcome to the Maine Science Podcast. I'm Kate Dickerson. Today's episode is with Rafael Grossmann, a surgeon who focuses on the convergence of technology and healthcare. That description barely does justice to Rafael's work, and our conversation was the first one I've had in a long time that made me think of science fiction throughout. Rafael is clearly determined to have a better healthcare future for all, and his argument and advocacy for technology playing a key role is both passionate and hard to counter. I hope you enjoy this conversation as much as I did. Welcome to the Maine Science Podcast. I know you're a trauma surgeon, but I'm going to let you give us a background on how on earth Maine was lucky enough to get you, because I know that you, like me, were not born here.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you, Kate, for inviting me. Yes, I am a surgeon. I'm originally from Venezuela, so I'm an immigrant. And we came here almost 17 years ago, out of all places. We were back in Venezuela after our training, my training in surgery and Audrey's training in communications in Ann Arbor, Michigan. And then we went back to Venezuela for about 3 years. After having been in Michigan for 7.5 years, we came back home to Venezuela, and unfortunately couldn't really see a future there for many other reasons that are beyond the scope of the podcast, this one. But we started looking, and we wanted to find a place to settle the family, and we concentrated in New England, which is an area that we were very familiar with in a way, and liked that very much. So we started looking, and of all places in New England, found the hospital in Maine that seemed to have the best potential for me to develop professionally, and the area that was an area that looked like it was really a good place to raise a family, for many reasons that anyone who is from Maine understands, the outdoors, the fact that it's a little bit out of the beaten path in a way, with many less of the bad things that you find in the big cities, and still with some of the good features that you find in big cities. And anyways, we settled in here, and we have been here for almost 17 years, and so far so good, I guess. The kids grew up here, and they kind of have the Maynard feeling, I think, and they're all out to college right now. So it's been a good time.
You're a trauma surgeon. How quickly did you realize that that's what you wanted to do, both for medicine and for surgery?
Yeah, well, I wanted to be a surgeon for sure very early on in my life. After high school, right? I went to med school. I decided to go to med school when I was in high school, pretty early, and then so med school is about 7 years in Venezuela, and the second half, I think I decided to be a surgeon. Before that, I wanted to. I like, I guess, the cliche that you hear from people, why you went to medicine, to help people. And I kind of like working with people and helping people, but I also like quick fixes in a way, in the good sense of the phrase. I couldn't be an oncologist, giving you a drug for months to see if it works. The fact that I could do something and change the outcome of someone's health or life quickly, by doing surgery or fixing you after trauma, or stopping bleeding or whatnot, that was very attractive to me. So I went from emergency medicine to pediatric surgery, to doing internal medicine and surgery, to doing surgery, which is what I really enjoyed the most doing. I couldn't see myself doing anything else. If I had to do it all over again, I think I'd do it exactly the same way. I do surgery, general surgery, but also what I've specialized in over the last 17 years, which is what I do here in Maine, along with my group of partners. It's do trauma surgery. We take care of any trauma that comes to the hospital, and almost any emergency surgery that comes to the hospital, as well as taking care of patients in the regular floor, but also in the ICU. The sickest patients, we could keep them alive and keep them in good shape.
So that's a huge range: general surgery, trauma surgery, and ICU. How hard is it, I guess, to switch hats?
Yeah, well, we kind of are trained to take care of the patients the healthiest ones to the sickest one, and it's really not changing hats that much. It's just a one very weird looking hat, I guess, that has all sorts of features to it. We 2/3 of what we do is emergency and trauma, and the other third is elective surgery. So you see patients in clinic and you operate a hernia or someone with a polyp in the bowel or some other not emergent problem. But then, a lot of our patients who come for trauma or for an emergency are very sick and they end up in the ICU. So we actually, the same team of doctors, we take care of that patient. We might ask for expertise, from someone with a very defined cardiac issue or renal issue or pulmonary issue. We might get the help of our colleagues to help us the same way as we help them with surgical issues, when they need. But it's primarily our patient, and we manage that patient until they get out of the hospital. It's in one way or the other. So it's fun. It's a wide range, but at the same time, it's really interesting because it's sort of hard to get bored. You do some days you do calm, elective, paced, predictable surgery, if there's anything that can be predictable in surgery. But other days they're just crazy. You're in a war mode and you're trying to, deal with two people dying in front of you.
One of the things that I know you for, because you've presented at the festival, both to our field trip kids, but also at 5 Minute Genius, is using technology in surgery. I know you were the first surgeon who did Google Glass, so I would like you to explain that experience, but then also why dive into technology for surgery? And maybe actually I should backtrack and you can explain exactly what that means, because I have a feeling that, people my age might assume of surgery is like what we used to see on MASH, right? A million years ago, which I'm not sure it looks like that anymore. So if you could go a little bit into the technology part, the Google Glass, I'm just going to sit back and listen.
Well, I'm sort of a geek, right? I love technology. I love gadgets. I always, since I was a kid, I was doing electronics and, setting up alarms and interfering with the TV signal. And growing up in these very interesting times, right, that we did, where we went from, maybe black and white TV to, holographic TVs now. It's been a lot of fun. And so in medicine, everything we do in medicine has really changed, I would say. Almost everything we do in medicine has the touch of technology. And I always talk about technology as technology is sort of this abstract, it could be from shaping a rock to sending a rover to Mars, right? That's all technology. It's just about how we use the technology, and for me, it's about the smart use of the technology to enhance and augment how we do healthcare, how we do medicine, and also how we teach the next generation of care providers, right? So I have always been passionate about technology, but it was about 10, 11 years ago when I really got really involved with the newest back then technology devices, like the smartphones and FaceTime cameras and video cameras. We one thing in Maine that we used to do a lot is telehealth, right? I'm talking before the pandemic. We did a lot of telehealth for many years, and then when I came here, I was sort of one of the instrumental, players in setting up a telehealth network for trauma. And then when the iPhone 4 came out with FaceTime and we could do video on a little phone, we set up telehealth mobile teleconsultation network to do consultations by video and audio from smartphones to iPod Touch devices or tablets, with a bunch of local hospitals in Maine. And that caught a lot of attention. That was my first TED Talk. I did a TEDx talk on that topic. And when I saw the power of the TEDx platform, to be able to communicate an idea to thousands and thousands of people and keep it ongoing, I really thought, it's really like a responsibility. I love doing it, but it's a responsibility from clinical engaged people like me, full-time surgeon. It's a responsibility to tell the story so that we accelerate that positive change by the use of the use of technology in order to improve what we do in healthcare. And accelerating that change is important because healthcare is really, I think, is pretty frustrating. Is in a pretty bad shape compared to what it should be. in the 21st century. So after that, I started getting into different platforms, including exponential medicine, and I went on to meet the really, really cool technologies. One of them was Google Glass, and then I did the first operation with Google Glass ever done live, and that caught a lot of interest. And then I was getting calls from people all over the world asking me about the experience and my thought about it and the innovation behind it. And that just kept me going and growing and growing as a snowball in regards to the use of technology to enhance medicine. And nowadays, several years later, I've become a little bit of a sort of an influencer of sorts, or I'm a keynote speaker. I go all over the world, or used to go all over the world, to talk about how different mindset can accelerate change, and from technologies that are available already, you can really make use of those technologies in different ways, just with a little twist of approach in order to maybe save a life or improve care, improve outcomes.
So when you set up the telehealth program for Maine, did you notice right away, and I don't mean instantaneously, but over the span of a month or a couple of months or a year, a change in how people recovered either from surgery or their overall health? I mean, did that make a big difference?
Well, initially we used it only for acute consultations, right? We were just doing it for, let's say, a physician up in, Holton, wanted to ask our opinion about a trauma patient who was there in their ER. And with their limited expertise, they wanted to have the expertise of a trauma surgeon in Bangor. So rather than talking over the phone, we would talk by video, and we would see the face of the surgeon, of the ED physician or provider. We would maybe see the patient and talk with the patient, or get more. It's about getting more clues in order for someone to really make a better decision, right? A better diagnosis. So we never used it after the fact. And it was because telemedicine is a difficult topic that's really to me, I've always been passionate about the possibility of communicating better, right? And we have the tools to communicate in excellent ways these days, and we've had them for 10 years or so. And telemedicine had been struggling for decades, right? And it took a week for COVID-19 to just flip the switch, and boom, now everyone is doing telemedicine. Everything we had been telling, or the ad I had been telling to Eastern Maine Health, for example, about telemedicine, and talking about it, preaching about it, evangelizing about it, and not just Eastern Maine, but many other venues. People always see the sort of the difficult side of things, the privacy, the reimbursement, the regulatory changes, the obstacles. And then suddenly all of that evaporated right overnight just because of COVID-19. So really necessity it made us, people talk about necessity being the mother of invention. In this case, it was like desperation being the mother of invention, because there was no other way to connect with patients, right? You couldn't bring them to the office. So what are you going to do? Are you going to close the hospital and the clinic, or are you going to see patients by, like we are doing right now, in video and on audio? So sometimes it takes a major event to shift the gears, but many times the shift comes from using technologies or platforms that were already available for a long time before the cataclysmic event happened. So that's kind of the summary of it. So we never did a prospective study for patients who were follow-ups, or that stuff is coming out now. We have seen now, we're getting all this data from millions and millions of telehealth visits that are being done all over the world. And that data, I think, is going to be positive, because to me it's just intuitive. I was just talking to someone today in a different meeting. It's good to have validation for new therapies or new devices, but sometimes if you ask me, I'm going to give you a flip phone, a cell phone, or a smartphone, and you're going to ask me, well, why? I mean, do you have any data that supports that the smartphone is better than the flip phone? Well, I'm pretty sure there's some studies out there, but it's pretty obvious that a smartphone is a better tool to communicate, or to, in general, to connect, than a flip phone is, for many reasons that for us are intuitive and obvious. So the same thing happens with telemedicine. And I think the wrong thing is that a lot of the studies out there that deal with telemedicine, and that sometimes don't give flying colors and great reviews, are approached in the wrong way. To me, telemedicine is not different than medicine. It's not telemedicine. It's just medicine. It's just health. It's not telehealth. So I could send you a note by mail reminding you of your appointment or giving you the biopsy results, or I could send you a text, or a chatbot can send you a text, or I can call you by phone on a landline, or I can have a video call with you on tele. So it's not a substitute. It's another way, another tool to communicate. And it never excludes other ways of communicating. If I'm going to operate on your thyroid and you have a lump and you live 150 miles away and I need to, feel the lump, well, I don't need to bring you to the office to feel the lump and to talk to you about thyroid cancer and then, a month later, come back before surgery and have another chat. We can do a lot of that stuff by remote connectivity, by video and audio. It's very good these days. The latency is very, very imperceptible. The image quality is great. We can communicate really, really well, even though you're not in front of me physically. And it is accepted that about 80% of office visits and medical doctors' visits do not require physical contact, and I'm good with that. I'm very much old school about touching the patients and embracing and having empathy and eye-to-eye connectivity. That is really my passion. But at the same time, I think technology can enhance that, because why bring that patient 150 miles one way to see you a couple of times before surgery when you can just have him come for the surgery only, and then avoid all the the wasted resources and frustrations and time and money involved in all those visits that we see, especially in Maine, in the middle of a storm for a 10-minute visit. That is not justified with the technology that we have today.
It sounds like you believe, number one, that this additional communication method is going to stick around no matter what. Number two, there's a bunch more that we can do without actually having to be in the same room, and it will only get better. I follow you on Twitter, and I've been fascinated with a lot of the wearable tech that you've been talking about. And I don't mean for surgeons, I mean for, like the patient like me. So if you could talk a little bit about whether you think this will stick around, and then just some of the innovative stuff that you are excited about right now.
There's so many tools out there that are barely touching the surface. It's the tip of the iceberg, really. I really think that in the next 3 to 5 years, we're going to see even more tools that are going to enable better exchange of data, in the case of, in any human endeavor, but especially in healthcare, wearables, ingestibles, soles, shoe soles, undersoles, rings or watches or patches, or continuously gathering data from patients, not just to treat patients, but more importantly to prevent getting sick. And when you put all that together, then at the end, the outcome is going to be better. But all these different tools, wearables are becoming smaller and smaller, and the data transmission is better and better. If you think about 5G and how eventually 5G, is going to be like 4G, and we're not going to think about it, but the latency is imperceptible. The amount of data, the spectrum, the bandwidth of the frequency is such that you can transmit, from your phone, tremendous amounts of data. And, when that gets everywhere, the connectivity, the communication enabling is going to be just fantastic, not just to make calls or send text or a little picture, but to do a real-time video call, to the point where last year in China, surgeons did an operation, robotic operation connected by cell tower 5G connectivity on a patient, all by cellular connectivity, 5G. So that's last year. So imagine now. So it's so the possibilities are endless. And if we add, the advances that are being made in artificial intelligence algorithms and machine learning, right, robotics, natural language processing, all those things which are part of artificial intelligence, they've been around us in background, right, for a long time. But now we're seeing more and more because there's more chat about that. But right now it's getting to the point where it's becoming almost scary, to the amount of decision-making power that some of the systems have. Better said, the amount of information that we can get from the systems in order to make better decisions as humans. And, I'm always passionate about artificial intelligence. I've done, several courses and certificates and MIT and whatnot. But there's a lot of scare about AI, right? But to me, it's really about the technology. It's about the smart use of the technology. You can use it for good or for bad. And specifically with AI, it's been proven that AI on its own is not as good as AI plus the human. And when we put the human and the AI together, I think the possibilities are endless, especially in medicine. So that is really, really exciting. Robotic surgery, robotic assisted surgery is also becoming pretty important these days. And for the last almost decade or so, 15 years or so, there's been kind of a domination of the field of robotic surgery by basically one big company. Right now, that is really becoming more diversified. Companies from the UK, from China, from Germany, even in the US. So there's going to be more competition, and there's going to be more diversity in the offers for robotic surgery. And along with that, the possibility to interact with data. We interact with data basically still on flat screens, which makes no sense when we have all these incredible technologies for virtual reality and augmented reality or mixed reality, what we call XR, all these immersive technologies. The way we communicate and we connect using this XR immersive technologies is going to radically change. And we have seen already, especially during the pandemic, when people had to be connected remotely to work, to educate themselves, in school, or to even train or simulation for training for work. And the devices are just accelerated away, becoming better and better. And it's just insane that you can just have a meeting with a bunch of, photovolumetric renderings of real people in your living room, and they're all managing digital data in 3D, and you're all talking about the same piece of, could be the heart, or could be the 3D rendering of an image on a magnetic resonance, or could be an engine, or could be anything. You can collaborate remotely, almost as if you were present. And that stuff is, again, just barely touching the surface. And when it really explodes, and it will explode within the next 3 to 5 years, it's just going to be just phenomenal.
So do you think a place that has such rural areas like Maine is at a disadvantage? Because, cell reception can be spotty in some parts of the state, and we don't have, statewide broadband access necessarily. How do we fix that and not lose out on some of these up and coming advances that we've got?
No, absolutely. Well, I think that in one aspect, it's really a big opportunity, right? Because we don't live in a big city, so we don't have, coffee shops all over the place with 5G connectivity or less, much less. But so it is an opportunity to have these technologies really connect us better and help us communicate better to enhance every aspect of human life, including healthcare and education. But, we've talked about that for a long time. Years ago, I remember, the 3-ring binder project that was going to bring, high-speed fiber optic connectivity to major health hubs in the state. And, if you think about that is amazing. If we had that. Now, every hospital in Maine, I can't say every hospital in Maine, but many of the hospitals in Maine have very good internet connectivity one way or another. I'm not sure what they use. Maybe it's high fiber, high-speed fiber, or maybe it's just regular cable. But in any case, I think that it's important to broaden the availability of Wi-Fi connectivity, of internet connectivity. Otherwise, none of this is possible. And everything is, under the present that you have to have connectivity. Otherwise, you can have whatever tool, and if you don't have electricity, or if you don't have, because electricity is even a real thing, or if you don't have a connectivity, if you're in one of the many little islands in Maine, and you get injured and you go to the little health clinic, if they don't have connectivity, then that's it. And it might be electricity even during a storm, or it could be Wi-Fi, it could be satellite connectivity. There's a lot of progress out there these days, though, trying to expand internet connectivity all over the world. I mean, we talk about Starlink, the Elon Musk's project, can't keep track of how many satellites are there out there already, but hundreds. I think it's more than 100 now. And, the goal is to encircle Earth with a network of Wi-Fi available anywhere on Earth. Google had similar projects. I think eventually it'll be, not an issue, but for a few years, I think it's still an issue. And places like Maine, and we don't have it as bad as many other places, in the world, but still, it's a real issue.
Was Google Glass a turning point for you from the perspective of this is truly transformative in how we do medicine?
Well, conceptually it was. For me, it was. When I did that surgery, and it wasn't really a big deal. All I did was connect my students to me doing the surgery from my perspective, seeing what I was seeing from a distance, instead of them being behind me trying to see what I was doing, right? So for them, it was a much better learning experience. For me, it was a much better teaching experience. And it was pretty simple, out-of-the-box experience. We made sure that we asked the patient and the family and the team about permissions, and everyone agreed, and we just did it in a secure line of communication to keep the patient's privacy, which is very, very much an important issue, right? But unfortunately, it didn't take locally as much as I would have wished. To tell you the truth, I was even reprimanded, whilst I was getting calls from China, Italy, Argentina to tell them about the surgery. And I think that small act that I did, a friend of mine, I wrote a little post, and a friend of mine from Forbes wanted to write a post, and he did. Few hours later, and after less than 24 hours, he had like thousands and thousands and thousands of hits on his post from Forbes, in Forbes. So he went all over the world, and to me, it was almost the first step in how to use augmented reality or mixed reality in healthcare, in surgery. You see now. A year after that, someone else did it with thousands of students. A few months after that, someone else did it. Every month we have some development, and I think it woke up almost a monster. Why are we not using these tools created for play and for listening to concerts and looking at the videos or playing music? Why are we not using these tools to potentially save someone's lives or improve someone's ability or someone's learning of doing surgery or whatnot? And so Google Glass still a viable product. There are a lot of, even in healthcare, companies that are using Google Glass in healthcare. It's kind of under the radar, and it's a design that I think was brilliant. Maybe their marketing campaign or whatever didn't make them as successful as they would expect it, but it was almost I call it the Model T of augmented reality glasses. Now we have all these head-mounted displays from Magic Leap to HoloLens and many others that are bringing, exponentially better than Google Glass, right? But not exclusive of Google Glass. Google Glass still has a very real role. We use Google Glass. I kept telling the hospital for almost 3 years to engage with the company that had Google Glass connected with a remote human scribe, so that the human scribe could be, and it took almost 3 years for me to convince the hospital. It was like an uphill battle to trying to convince the hospital to do it. And then finally they agreed to do it, and then everyone loved it. And we could have been the first hospital in the world doing that. But no, we were like the 26th hospital in the U.S. or something doing that. So sometimes it takes a little bit of guts to jump in the innovation wagon and be the first. And as long as everything is safe and you think that you're meeting all the requirements, then just go for it, because it can help your industry, but also it can help patients. It can make the experience better for the patients, for the physicians. So I think it didn't change really. I've had the same vision for head-mounted display and better ways of communicating since I used Google Glass. But unfortunately, in real life, in practice, it barely changed my practice because of where I work at all, unfortunately. I would go to Dubai or other places or other countries, to set up programs. And at home, I couldn't do any of that.
When you said the Google Glass and it allowed you to have students, it reminded me of, those medieval surgical theaters that they're built so that people can be at the top and look down. And it sounds like it's almost a straight line from how medicine used to be taught. We forgot about it. And now we're back at it with the idea. So the head mounted, you said it's got AR and mixed reality. How do those work? I'm just going to throw an example and you can tell me if it's totally off base. Let's say you're doing some type of surgery with the heart and you have one of those things on. Would it show you all the places around the heart that you have to watch out for? Or would it be that person's heart projected on there? Like, how would that physically work?
Yeah, well, none of these devices yet are being used in clinical, patients. So in patients right now, and there's a lot of noise out there, and the HoloLens was used in surgery and whatnot. We're not. There's like three phases. I always talk about education, right? About diagnostics, and in education and diagnostics, we are like blowing it. It's amazing stuff that you can do for education and diagnostics. You can look at an X-ray rather on a flat screen, or even on a flat, even if you have a 3D rendering of the image on the X-ray. Imagine your lungs, for example, or a bone or something. You could do a 3D rendering of that on a 2D screen. So that is nearly as good as being able to see that image in 3D projected in front of you in the space, and you can go around that image and basically play with it and go inside the image and look at it at different planes, right? So that is unbelievable. Now, in therapy, in actual use, we're barely, scraping the surface still. There's a company called Brain Lab, which is a monster of company, very successful, phenomenal, German-based. It's basically surgical navigation, imaging navigation. And they've been around for years, and any hospital that does any advanced neurosurgical or orthopedic procedures have a Brain Lab platform on their hospital. They're every hospital in the world. So now and I've tried their newer platform about a year and a half, 2 years ago, with Magic Leap, which is a device that is for mixed reality. That I'm one of the healthcare advisors for Magic Leap, and they showed me what they had, and it's basically the ability to look at those images during a procedure to guide the surgery better. So they have they call it a mixed reality viewer that allows the surgeon to have a much better and easier and more efficient viewing of images during surgery even. But these are all devices that are obviously not obstructive of the vision of the surgery, but you don't want to be operating with one of those devices on unless you're doing something like you're placing a pin or so rather than be looking at the images on monitors, on different areas of the room, and you're having to turn yourself from the patient to look at the monitor, you could have the image right where you want it, in front of you as you are in front of the patient, and in a more ergonomic way. For example, they're using, for example, the HoloLens in the cardiac cath lab, where they have multiple screens and they're doing things that they're looking at different screens, looking up or looking right or left, looking at different screens as they advance the wire or as they inject the contrast dye. But with the HoloLens, you can have all those screens, manage those screens locations with gestures in front of you in the air, so without having to touch anything, which is great because you have to be sterile, right? So the interaction with all the data, with all the imaging data, is much more efficient and more ergonomic, and at the end it's just better for sure. But then from there you go to, at some point, yes, you're going to be able to, let's say, inject a dye in the patient, and with these glasses you'll be able to see the areas that you want to resect or the areas that you don't want to injure during surgery, right? We do that already with robotic surgery. We see on the robotic surgery screen on the console, we inject a dye and we see where the common bile duct is, so we don't injure the common bile duct, for example. So the same thing could happen in open surgery or in laparoscopic surgery with the surgeon wearing this type of glasses. And the glasses are now, again, you can see through them. So you have people in the military, you have people in different industries, using these glasses as protective devices, but at the same time, they have the ability to project any digital image in front of them and manipulate those images. And even more so, they have a camera, so they can connect to anyone remotely, and that person remotely who might be an expert or a learner is seeing what you're seeing and learning. So sort of an exponential evolution from that Google Glass experience. Now you can have that through these glasses as well. You can have someone, don't touch that, don't injure that, don't move right, move left. Or that person can bring their hands remotely in augmented reality in your visual field and guide you as if they were there, but they're not. They are 1,000 miles away, So the possibilities are really phenomenal.
It is pretty extraordinary to think about how that could transform places where they don't have a big staff or they don't have experts. So do you have I don't even know if this is a fair question. Do you have a favorite or do you have something that you're really excited about that you hope you can kind of really use it and promote in all the good ways and advocate for over the next couple of years?
Well, it's hard to have a favorite, when there's so many technologies out there. There's so many interesting things going on right now. I think that if we're talking about wearables, for example, I gotta say, my favorite is a ring wearable that is called the Oura, because it measures a lot of things, physiologic variables, without me even knowing, and the battery is for days and days and days, and even checks my temperature. So I've been involved in a few COVID-related studies where, they try to look at the data and then predict whether someone can have COVID before they actually have symptoms of COVID. So that's pretty exciting. So for wearables, I think that the Oura Ring is really this finished device that I've had for a few years, and I think that they're pretty amazing. If we talk about watches, I think the Apple Watch has no competition. If we talk about headset, XR headsets, I have to say that I love features from Magic Leap, obviously, and from HoloLens. I think those are really the two real players right now, and to use that for connecting and communicating better in the industry setting. They're not consumer devices, I think, yet, but I think that they're going to be primary players in any industry, including healthcare and education, very soon, and for many, many years to go. And then if we talk about sort of consumer type AR devices, there's a device called the Vuzix, a company called the Vuzix, and the Vuzix, they have a number of glasses that are becoming very accepted and common place in many industries, including healthcare. But one of their devices is it's called the Blade from Vuzix, and it's just a set of glasses, and you can see in those glasses, just like in Google Glass, an image floating in front of you, and you can manipulate, the menu in there, the computer menu in there, by just tapping or swiping on the side frame of the glass. And it connects to the internet, and you can ask Google a question, and you can have music played for you, or you can, do pretty much anything you would do with a smartphone in general. They have different apps, and you can navigate the apps with voice or with. So that device, I think that there'll be a point where a lot of people is going to be using these devices in many places, obviously different levels of socioeconomic development in different countries, but in many developed countries, I think just like smartphones are out there, I think that eventually we'll get to the point where we're holding a device to look at something, and it'd be kind of ridiculous, when you can do it from a set of glasses. Or as the glasses get smaller, even contact lenses will be embedded with the capabilities of doing XR or augmented reality. And then when we talk about VR, right, VR, they're obviously the Oculus Quest 2 is probably the best device out there, I would say, for most things. But there are devices like Pico device that are more for the industry. But the stuff happening with these two devices, it's so much being produced in virtual reality right now, and it's so good, and you can manipulate everything with gestures. Some of them you don't even need an internet connectivity, and you can do a telehealth visit, with your provider, and you see the provider is seeing, how you are from a computer camera. They're seeing what you're doing, and they are in the room digitally guiding you to, do more than 30 degrees or less, or, guide a therapy remotely and get all these, data points from measuring what you're doing. So it's really unbelievable, the stuff that is happening out there.
This is a totally random question. How heavy is that ring? How long did it take you to get used to it?
It's super light. It's actually, I would like it if it's heavier, to tell you the truth, because it almost feels like it's plastic, but it's not. It's really I don't wear any rings or nothing. I like not to wear any of that stuff. The only, I wear watches and things because I'm always involved in different projects, checking on things and trying different things. But this ring is really awesome because I don't have to worry about it. Every few, several days I get a message to charge it, and I charge it, in a few minutes, and then it's on again and it measures so many variables on my phone that I can keep track of them. My pulse, my respirations, my temperature especially, but also the sleep algorithm. I'm always fascinated with the sleep algorithms and devices that track your sleep and stuff. And not that I care much about, but because I don't get that much sleep, maybe because of that work I do, I'm always fascinated by sleep. but you can see how you're doing and what things you do that might prevent you from sleeping well. And they also, the interesting things is that they are also connected with AI algorithms, right, within their platform. And the algorithm tells you, don't exercise this late. Your basal, heart rate in the middle of the night was a little elevated. Were you drinking alcohol, or were you, maybe you shouldn't drink, or maybe, or the temperature thing, where we found that people, with spikes in temperature progressively, you can preclinically predict maybe if someone has a disease like COVID-19, for example. All those studies are happening and are really, really interesting. People, for example, maybe women being able to predict when they're fertile, on their cycle, because of the temperature changes there are temperature changes that are better than a thermometer, because you're not checking in one time a core temperature, you're checking skin temperature over a long time. So the algorithm predicts and tells you more accurately what the temperature might be. So it's really, really exciting.
Are there any final pieces with the technology, medicine, surgeon connection that you'd like to make sure that we know about?
Everything is about improving how we connect and communicate. Everything could be data, could be, personal communication. I think that if COVID-19 has shown us something, is that remote connectivity is a must. Especially that nowadays, you can't really progress or continue without remote connectivity, right? And the platforms out there that are being developed for remote connectivity are just insane. Some of these platforms involve either digitally created avatars in virtual reality, where you're completely immersed in a digital room, and you have a rendering of your lab, and you have students, avatars of your students, personalized avatars, and they're all interacting with each other, and you give them a class, and you're looking at different instruments, and then some of these devices have ways of having haptics, where you can, if you train doing a surgical procedure, for example, you can grab a digital drill and you can feel with these gloves the actual tissue drilling, different densities of tissue. So all that stuff, I think, is very interesting. The haptics of virtual reality. There are companies that are doing photovolumetric renderings of people. So I can have your digital picture, 3D, not an avatar, but a Kate, a hologram of Kate in real time, talking to me in real time. And there are companies doing holographic, almost teleportation, which are just, there's one company that I've a little involved with, the name is Portal, Portl. And Portal is based in California, and they can have, you step on this place and boom, you're beamed up in this cube or this portal and very high grade definition, in real time. You could be 3,000 miles away or 3 meters away. So for entertainment, they have used it for videos of people playing music, and have a musician in real life and a musician who's a hologram. But imagine that stuff for medicine. Imagine someone checking with you at home, and instead of a phone call, you have a nurse or a doctor, talking to you, and discussing how you're feeling. Imagine the feeling of that better empathy between the holographic image rather than a voice or a text and the other human, the patient. So I think that's really important. That's why I always say that technology is improving the way, it's making medicine more humane, because you are using the technology the right way. So you're making the interaction more empathetic by using the technology in a smart way. And even more so, there are companies like Unique, which is a New Zealand company, and the Digital Human Project, where they have this digitally created avatar that looks like a human person's video, and is almost in 3D, but you can see the drops of sweat on this avatar. It's just amazing. But not that only, but it's actually powered by artificial intelligence algorithm. So you could have imagine a chat bot, right, that you get text from, or a phone call, but you can have this avatar talk to you, and you ask questions, and the chatbot gives you answers that are appropriate based on what you're asking. And the database is so huge that the questions are just like from a human. So, we know that the supply of healthcare providers, for example, is, minuscule compared to the demand worldwide. We know that 5 billion people in the world, 2/3 of the population don't have access to safe surgery or surgical care, safe or affordable care. The same thing in many other specialties, right? So if we can have the healthcare providers augmented and enhanced and multiplied by a bunch of smart avatars that can maybe play the role of the pre-visit or the triage to see whether you need to go to the hospital or not, and in a way bring that gap to be a little bit shorter or smaller. I think that'd be a great advancement in the way we communicate and we use the resources. I've seen examples of this avatar even this morning when I connected to this person in Australia, and it's amazing. You talk to this avatar, and this avatar, you can tell that it's not a human, but barely. But the important thing is that the answers are, how are you feeling? You have a headache. Are you the headache? Well, have you had the headache for a while? Is it the right side? Is it the left side? You think, have you been drinking, or do you fall? Or all these questions that I would ask, but it's an avatar. And based on that, the avatar, well, I think that you better, not worry about it, or you should drink a lot of water, or you should go to the doctor right away. So that's really important. And those are probably the latest news that I have from the technology front.
It's interesting. It feels very much on the cusp of science fiction, but in all the good ways, in all the really cool ways that I like science fiction.
Absolutely.
Rafael, talking to you about your work always makes me pretty excited because you're so passionate about it. And I think the part I love the most is how much you talk about education and reaching people who don't have access to all of this. I think it's really valuable and really easy to forget that all these tools can be used in all those ways. So I am grateful that you keep reminding us of that.
Thank you. Thank you.
The Maine Science Podcast has received support from the Maine Technology Institute and is recorded at Discovery Studios at the Maine Discovery Museum in Bangor, Maine. The Maine Science Podcast is produced and edited by me, Kate Dickerson. I received production support from Maranda Bouchard. The Discover Maine theme was composed and performed by Nick Parker.